Welcome to Business Legal Lifecycle TV, the live TV show all about the legal aspects of your business to help educate you on complex legal terms in an easy to understand manner, to help understand why you need to do certain things in your business from a legal point of view, and to help you develop a plan for the future. Our mission at Business Legal Lifecycle is to help empower all small to medium-sized businesses around the world to get access to legal advice so that they can help build their communities and make the world a better place. Did you know that any business owner is on average 7 months away from losing everything? That is the average time it takes from a successful business to fold when an aspect of their business is not set up correctly. Have you ever wanted to get legal advice but didn't understand what was going on? Do you feel like there is a divide between lawyers and their clients? Then this TV show is for you. It is all about empowering you and your business with the knowledge and tools to ensure that this doesn't happen to you. Business Legal Lifecycle TV delivers a twice-weekly show focusing on the legal aspects of your business. At lunchtime on Mondays, we present Fast Fix Monday, a quick 5 to 10 minute show that will give you some actionable steps to consider for the week for your business. And at lunchtime on Wednesdays, we present our in-depth show of between 30 minutes and an hour, where we go through complicated legal aspects of your business in a simple to understand, plain English manner. And whether that is through educational pieces or interviews with experts in their fields. Welcome everyone to the January 2018 monthly legal updater. My name's Jeremy Stretton. I'm one of the founders of the Business Legal Lifecycle, and with me today is Craig Mason.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us.
And today we're going to give you our monthly legal updater for January 2018. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, welcome. Today we're going to go through, as we normally do on the first Friday of every month, some top legal changes from Australia and around the world. Now, traditionally, December's quite a slow month for new cases and new laws because everyone's on holidays. This year it was a 3-week month. So what we wanted to focus in on in this legal updater was some of the big things that are changing in the laws as of the 1st of January 2018. So if you're watching this live, this is on the 5th of January 2018. So this is just going back a few days to the 1st of January to go through what has changed and what important things have changed for people in business and also personally in Australia. I'm going to do the important things for Australia. Craig is going to talk about some important things around the world that we've got. I'm then going to talk about some insolvency statistics, which I think are interesting and I think are good to know about the changes from the insolvency things around Australia for the last financial year. And then Craig and I are going to go through some of the important news from ASIC and the ACCC, which we get from them from December. So kicking off January, probably the biggest thing for investors is there's been a lot of changes and there's been a lot of talk about these changes to the rules of what you can deduct when you have an investment property. And the big one that came in on the 1st of January was if you've got an investment property that's in another state or another part of Australia, you used to be able to claim a tax deduction for the costs of your flights, car hire and accommodation for going and inspecting or maintaining those rental properties. That's gone now. You're not allowed to claim a tax deduction for those costs. So if you do have a rental property that it's in Queensland and you live in WA, you can't claim a tax deduction for that flight anymore. You still got to go and maintain and inspect your property, but maybe you should use a management agent rather than just doing it yourself on a regular basis. So you can't claim those as tax deductions anymore. Another change that comes in, it's not so much for business owners, but for students, is they've actually reduced the amount of time that you need to work before you can qualify for a bunch of the different government subsidies for youth allowance and those kind of things. It's now 14 months down from 18 months. And they've also reduce the amount of pay that you have to get. If you are a student and you're looking at those things, I'm not going to go through the technical rules, but just know that if you are a student or you've got children who are students, that those rules have changed. So you need to make sure that you're complying with those. There are a raft of changes that came in on the 1st of January on what's been dubbed Gonski 2.0. For anyone who doesn't know Gonski, there's the Gonski Review into Education. There are a bunch of rules that have changed as of the 1st of January. I'm not going to go through them all. But if you've got school-age children or if you're in the education industry and you're interested about that, you should know that those changes have come in and that you should check those out. Number 4 is some restrictions on commissions that can be paid to financial planners for life insurance products. So there's been a lot of hype and a lot of, I think, unnecessary stigma that has been attached to financial planners and the commission that they can receive for certain products that they recommend. Well, the government's brought in limits on those commission structures that they're allowed to be paid. So if you are in that financial planning game, you probably are aware of those changes, but you should investigate that and make sure that you're aware of the changes, because that may affect your product model and your business model. There's a couple from New South Wales specific that have come in. New South Wales have brought in similar rules to other states, and that's to do with conscientious objectors to vaccinations. If you are a conscientious objector to vaccinations, then you're not able to send your children to childcare, and that, as I said, brings it in line with other states. Another rule that's come in that is interesting for our property developer listeners in New South Wales is if you're building a property, a building that's strata titled and is over 4 stories, you need to lodge a 2% bond over the cost of the construction with the New South Wales Building Commission to cover defective constructive work. So, excuse me. So that means that basically, if there is defective construction work over a number of years, that the government will have a pot essentially where they can come back and say that defective work has got to be repaired. There's not a lot of details on exactly how that's going to work. Obviously, that's going to be a work in progress, but just know that if you are a property developer and you're doing developments in New South Wales and it's over 4 stories, that you need to pay a 2% bond for defective construction work. And the last one that will come in on the 9th of January 2018, which we've mentioned before, is that same-sex couples will now be able to legalise their union. So I know that a lot of same-sex couples have started to get married because of the way that the law was drafted and the time frames and the rest of it. The actual registration of those marriages can come in on the 9th of January. So they're the top 7 changes that have come in. Obviously, these are things that some of them are things that we've talked about before. There are things that are state specific, but you should know that there are changes that come in, and we'll continue to go through and update as those things become more known and more important. And especially the same-sex marriage. I mean, that's pretty cool that that's coming in. In a couple of days' time, then people are going to be able to register their marriages, and everyone will be able to do that equally. So, Craig, do you want to go through the changes from around the world?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a couple of interesting ones there in Australia. Hopefully, they sound good in theory, and hopefully they work in practice. So, going around the globe, again, there's a couple of interesting ones here as well. So, Californians will soon be able to buy marijuana legally for recreational purposes. There's going to be, there are some issues at the moment with local governments over the actual sales and locations, etc. And so that might be limited to start with. But if you're in California and you're into that, then you're able to potentially buy it legally for recreational purposes. So that's the first one. Yeah.
Can I just interrupt you there? I read a story that the first person to actually buy it was an ex-federal prosecutor of drugs who is based in California. So everyone's kind of getting on board and seeing that they want to go ahead with that. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Cool. All right. Moving to China, they've introduced legislation or made a decision that they'll no longer accept plastic and other waste from other countries, which seems like a good idea. That obviously means that the countries that have been sending their waste and plastic, etc., to China will now have to find an alternative country to dump their waste in. So, sounds pretty good to me. Obviously, except for the country that now needs to put it somewhere else. So, that's what China's done. Moving to London, and still on the environment theme, and there's a few of these going through the environment theme. All black cabs in London need to run on electric power going forward. So that's a pretty interesting one. It sounds good, again, in theory, but in practice, the cost of all that sort of stuff, I'm sure they've looked at. But that's coming in, that all black cabs need to run on electric power in London. Staying in the same region in Europe, gas and wood-burning stoves must now comply with strict emissions and energy-efficient rules. Already, some places in Europe have banned the sale of open fires in homes, and now they're regulating the emissions, etc., in gas and wood burning stoves. So, not something that we really appreciate in Australia. I don't think there's many houses with gas and wood burning stoves, particularly us. We're based here in Brisbane, so I don't know. You ever had a gas or wood burning stove or a open fireplace?
I know that one of my neighbours does a couple of doors down. I think they use it for about a week in the year, because it's summer at the moment and it's about 35 degrees, or at least it feels like 35 degrees every day here.
Yeah, absolutely. To Gibraltar, they've recently brought in legislation that means that there's licensing or new licensing requirements for financial technology firms using blockchain. So this is going to shake up the building and finance industry there, and it seems to be the first attempt anywhere in the world to regulate the industry. So I'm sure it's going to continue throughout the world, trying to regulate that industry and the blockchain technologies. So something to look out for there. Over in Russia, if you use internet messaging services, you now have to register your name before you can use those services. So, yep, cool. That's Russia. And then back to Britain, they're getting a university regulator to oversee the quality and standards of the universities in Britain. And this is going to be known as the Office for Students. So there you go. That's around the world. As I said, plenty of environment things there, but some business things as well, and one for the students. So yeah, over to you, Jeremy. Insolvency statistics.
Yeah. So ASIC released in December 2017 their annual report for the financial year ending 30 June 2017 on insolvencies, and it was really interesting having a read through this, that there was actually a decline by 18.4% of insolvencies. Now, ASIC isn't able to give a reason for that, but it's an interesting statistic to see that there's actually been a decline in insolvencies in Australia year on year in just that period. And nearly 20% is quite a significant number, don't you think, Craig?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but interestingly, whilst the overall number was consistent, the actual numbers and how that split between different industries and different companies actually remained pretty similar. So, looking through the report, it's been quite consistent that nearly 80% of the companies that have gone into liquidation or had an insolvency event had less than 20 employees. Construction remains the biggest industry with over 20%, and that's been consistent over the last couple of years. Companies with assets of less than 100,000 equate for 84% of company failures. That's a staggering figure. I mean, it's not a surprise, I guess, that a company that's failed doesn't have any money, doesn't have many assets, but under 100 grand is quite a significant number of companies. And 43% had less than $250,000 worth of assets. Now, the top reasons, and this is something that I thought was interesting and something that goes along with what we've been saying for a long time. The number one reason is 47% is inadequate cash flows. So that's, you would expect that from a business that's failed, that they would have inadequate cash flow. 47% said that, so less than half. But 46% had a poor strategic management and strategic planning for the future of their business. That's a staggering figure, and it's something that we've talked about a lot. That 2015, I believe it was, there was a report that was issued by the Australian Productivity Commission that said the leading cause of business failure was a lack of planning and a lack of strategic planning. Well, this is continuing. 46% of company failures are from that, and that's consistent year on year. That the main reason for failure is a lack of planning. The last one is poor financial control. That's 35%. Now, interestingly, I thought the last statistic that I wanted to mention was that in 63% of cases, there were reports by liquidators that they suspected that there was insolvent trading on behalf of the directors. Now, insolvent trading means that whilst the company's still operating, the directors knew or ought to have known that the company couldn't pay its debts. And what that can mean is that the directors can be held personally liable. So in 63% of cases, liquidators thought that there was a case for insolvent trading. The problem with that is that there aren't many insolvent trading cases because they are very hard to prove and they cost a lot of money. So it's very interesting to see that insolvent trading, and again, that's remained consistent, even though there's been a drop of insolvency events. but there's still a consistent number of insolvent trading or possible insolvent trading cases that just aren't getting prosecuted because there's just no money or there's no point in it, because either there's no money in the company, there's no money, the directors have got no money to pursue, or there's just not enough evidence to show it. So I thought that's really interesting to see that, yeah, the same statistics are the same over the years, but really this problem of poor strategic management and strategic planning is not going away. And if you are in business and these are things that you aren't thinking about, you need to start thinking about them because they're really important moving forward for your business. So that's the ASIC report on insolvencies. Craig, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, well, just with that as well, we've got the safe harbour provisions that are coming in, already come in. So that should hopefully, if when we do this in January 2019, and they release the report at the end of this year, I would hope, if it's working well, that the percentages of companies that have failed due to poor strategic management, those sorts of things, hopefully will have come down on the basis of the safe harbour provisions, and that people are actually utilising them. So if you're in business and you're concerned about the way your business is going, then just don't let it fester. There are advisors out there that can help you, and it's you do it before the problems become too problematic to fix. So make sure if you are thinking about it, that you do talk to the right people and use your team of advisors that you have set up at the beginning of your business, hopefully. And if you don't have them, then go and seek them out. So it's good that it's going down, I guess, but there's still lots of work to be done in that area. And hopefully some more money for ASIC to go for insolvent trading cases as well. So moving along, still with ASIC and financial planners, which Jeremy mentioned before, there's some changes coming in Australia about limiting the insurance commissions for financial planners. And recently ASIC have permanently banned the directors of Found Financial for deceptive and dishonest conduct. And lo and behold, the allegations involve life insurance for clients and not providing the proper information or getting the proper information, and potentially some deceptive conduct in the claims to get the most amount of commission. I don't really understand how it all works in the financial industry from the commission point of view, but what they were doing was allowing the more commission to be paid up front, I believe. And when ASIC found out about it, now they're permanently banned as directors and can no longer operate a financial services firm. So ASIC have done something there, and that sort of flows, and I probably mentioned it, at least Jeremy and I have spoken about it before. It's a couple of bad eggs in the industry have then sort of ruined it for everyone, and now there's a whole heap of regulation about it. So that's ASIC recently. Jeremy, ACCC.
So I thought this was an interesting one to let everyone know that the ACCC have actually been launched an investigation into digital platforms such as Facebook and Google, and to look at the effect that they're having on competition in Australia. So it'll be really interesting, and that's both in the media industry and the advertising industry, because we're running this show live on Facebook. It's become a media platform, and it's becoming more of a media platform, but it's also an advertising platform. So the ACCC are investigating what the effect of all of this expansion by these big companies into these realms is having on competition. And it'll be really interesting to see over the coming months what that investigation reveals, and what, if anything, they want to do about it. It may be that nothing needs to be done about it, but it'd be interesting to see what actually happens. So Craig, do you want to talk about the next one?
Yes, that's a building company in Western Australia, where they've had some unfair contract provisions. They were required, the building company that is, required to amend a non-disparagement clause in their contract that allowed them essentially to stop work or suspend work if a customer complains. So you can see why that was amended to be unfair. Obviously, if you want to complain about something that's warranted, then that should be dealt with, not I'm stopping work and you can't do that. So they've amended it to remove the non-disparagement clause. So that's Western Australia Building Company.
Yeah, great. And the last one to mention today is the Valve Corporation, which is based in Washington State in the US. And you probably don't know who they are, but they're one of the world's largest online video game companies. And they've actually been prosecuted in Australia for misleading representations about their consumer guarantees. And they've actually been fined $3 million. Now, that's actually gone as far as the full federal court of Australia. So this fine was originally levied by the ACCC, and then goes to the federal court. It's then appealed to the full federal court, and then they do have the opportunity to appeal it to the High Court. And their main ground of appeal was that they couldn't be fined because they weren't an Australian company. And the full federal court found, well, that's just not the case. That if you're trading in Brisbane or Australia, that you are subject to the laws of that country. So it'll be interesting to see whether that is appealed any further. But at the moment, it's definitely the case in Australia. And I think it's the right law to say that if you are trading in a country, you are subject to those laws in that country, because at the end of the day, they've got to protect their citizens. So that'll be interesting to watch this space, and we'll monitor that one and see where it goes. But yeah, that's the last of the news from ASIC and the ACCC.
Yeah, and I think those sorts of ones where with ACCC or other people are prosecuting international companies about things they've done in Australia, I think it's going to become the theme of this year. I know there's a couple of other things happening at the moment with Apple and the upgrades, or the necessity to download an upgrade, which then potentially, allegedly, I should say, affects your battery life. There are some things in place at the moment, I understand, where there's an expression of interest about a class action in relation to that, and the refunds that should be given, because you basically need to get, or potentially you need to get a new phone or a new battery because of what happened. So I think that's going to be a lot more of that throughout this year, and we'll closely follow those and give you updates each month. We'll be back again, obviously, next month for another Legal Updater show. We'll be here on Monday for Fast Fix Monday, and we hope you can join us then. As always, if you've got any feedback about this particular show, the Legal Updater, or any questions or anything you want to add, or something you want us to talk about, please get in contact on the various platforms that are available to you. We'd be happy to assist or do some research on it, or whatever it might be. So thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully you got something out of this Legal Updater, and we'll see you on Monday. Thank you.
See you on Monday.